Is this that JPP podcast?
Pregnant ladies and little kids better get the hell out of the way. I'm running. I'm like Forrest Gump, dude. I'm running. So, the Titanic was the biggest ship on the ocean, but that didn't mean it was unsinkable. I want you to use ombudsman. I got one for you. My name is Kevin, the official ombudsman of the Just Let's Play podcast. You like apples?
What is up? We are back and better than ever. Shout out to Mike Greenberg. And we got on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, we got the normal guest. We got Uncle Tony, LJ Pomps. What's going on, guys?
What's up?
I'm on the Malort hotline. I just want to make that clear.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. Merry Christmas,
Hey, we do
Happy
have some
New Year.
Malort, don't
Feliz
we? Yeah, I
Navidad.
Tony, I brought a bottle of
Kwanzaa.
Malort for Christmas. I'm just saying, so we can distribute that however
Tony,
it needs to.
You're going to get a bottle of Malort, dude.
Merry Christmas.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
Wow. The gifts just keep coming. And we do want to
I'm
say to all the listeners, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. We've kind of been on a little hiatus. We come out with the pod every now and then. We'll get more consistent. Just the holidays, traveling. But to everybody, Merry Christmas.
Merry
the
Christmas,
JPP
Happy
pod.
holidays,
Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Happy December.
Kwanzaa,
all of them. Yeah.
All the good
Kwanzaa,
stuff.
all the
Boxing
things.
Day. I don't know. What is it
Boxing
in
Day is
Sweden?
today, right?
Is it Christmas
I
in
think Boxing
Sweden?
Day is today. Mm.
Yeah, they mostly. Well, I mean, Sweden does a lot of things, but yeah, I think Christmas is celebrated there.
It's cousin Trey's birthday, by the way.
Nice. Happy birthday.
Biddy.
Happy birthday, Big 5-0. So, real quick, speaking of Christmas, I wanted to throw out there, did I miss the boat? Like, are you born a full Christmas pajama guy, or does that transition over time? I've been seeing a lot of pictures of the full pajamas and the matching pajamas. Is that a thing? We never did that back in our family, but I kind of want to jump on that bandwagon.
We did not. And I have to say, I turned down my block on Christmas morning. I had to go run an errand for Tammy. And I turned on my block, and the whole family at the end, from daddy to mama to little kids, are all in the same jammies. The daddy looked embarrassed as hell that I saw him. I swear it was pretty funny. And,
No one was supposed to see him. It was just
he probably should have been a little embarrassed. It was something. Yeah, it was cute.
Well, Kevin, since I sleep in the nude, I really have no reason to have pajamas. So
We were wondering about your sleeping.
No, we weren't. No, we weren't.
Some of us know all too well.
as long as we don't try to verify that, we're good. Okay.
well. All right, there's no good segue, so let's just jump into.
There is never a good segue in this show. You do your job very well, but we don't make it easy.
We are on to week 17 of the NFL regular season. A lot of teams are dead, and there's a few still alive. But I wanted to jump straight into the game that I thought we might have learned the most from this past week, and that was New Orleans beating Pittsburgh. I think the score ended up being like 28-24. And what the game essentially did was it put New Orleans, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, LJ, I think it locked New Orleans into that 1 seed.
Correct.
For the NFC, which last time that happened was 2009 when Drew Brees got his first ring. And then it put Pittsburgh, they're on the outside looking in now. They have a chance of getting in the playoffs, but they need some serious help.
It requires a tie. They need a tie to get in.
Tie,
or they need to win in Baltimore.
Ravens.
Yeah.
lost.
Right.
Yeah.
But it went from the Steelers looked like a team that was a really scary team, which I still think they have a lot of talent, to now they might end up being one of the better teams we've seen not make the playoffs. I'll start out with you real quick, Tony. Who did you learn more from? Did you learn more about New Orleans and what they can be, or about Pittsburgh and your boy Big Ben?
Well, I will say that was a really great game, and I'll tell you this: the Steelers have had. We may talk about it a little bit later, but they've had 2 or 3 games this year that have come down to that last play, and it just hasn't been made. They've made a couple, with Big Ben stretching across the goal line there. I know that made LJ feel pretty bad, but it said more to me about the Saints in that they have really stepped up with a couple of real tests here in the second half of the season.
Agreed.
A couple of really tough games, and they are winning games both by scoring a lot of points and by not scoring a lot of points.
Where was that game? Where was that game,
they,
by the way?
New Orleans.
It was
at New Orleans. And that's the other thing. The Steelers, there's no excuse for not making the playoffs with this team. I agree with that, but they've had some really tough breaks down the stretch this second half of the season with tough games on the road. It does not make up for the fact that they should have won the majority of those, but they have not. And that was a make it or break it, and they put themselves in that position, and now they need help to get in the playoffs. So, but the Saints is who I learned more about on that game. Well, really a strong performance overall.
And to piggyback off what you're saying there, I do think the Steelers have had a couple of games where you just look at it and the ball is just not going their way. The call just didn't go their way. There was that, I don't know if y'all saw it, there was that pass interference call they called where Kamara got, I think Joe Hayden touched him on the back, like with the pinky, and they called a pass interference in the end zone, which put New Orleans on the 1. They end up scoring. And then I just think at the end of the day, you're going to look back at the Steelers schedule and see that loss they had to the Raiders and that tie to the Browns in week 1 or whatever. There's just some games
that fluke loss to the Broncos. I mean, seriously.
There's just going to be some games where you look back and go, what the hell? Good teams win those games. Because there's going to be games against the Saints where you lose in New Orleans. There's no shame in that.
Yeah.
But I'll go over to you, Dad. What was your thoughts on that game? Did you learn more about the Saints or the Steelers?
Well, I didn't get to see the game, but I do have some thoughts on Tomlin and the Steelers. So, I guess to answer your question.
Is Mike Tomlin's seat getting a little toasty over there?
Well, my question was, is Mike Tomlin who we thought he was? And I know that at one time, I think I know you and I, Kevin, maybe even LJ, we were like, we wanted him at the Cowboys. And I can't make up my mind. But can I give you a little background on Tomlin since you queued me up like this?
Slap it on us.
So Tomlin, my question is Mike Tomlin who I thought he was? He's been the Steelers head coach since 2007, and I believe he's like the third one in the last 50 years. Something crazy like that.
Noel Cowher and then Tomlin.
Noel Cowher and Tomlin, yeah.
Right. By the way, he did play football. Interestingly enough, I found out he didn't really, I don't know if this is interesting or not. His real dad, Mr. Tomlin, he didn't really know. He was raised by his mom and his stepdad. I think his real dad died early and wasn't very involved in his life. He was second team all-conference wide receiver at William and Mary. That surprised me a little bit. I kind of thought he was more linebacker-ish, but he was a wide receiver at William and Mary, second team all-conference. He became only the third coach in the NFL history to finish 500 or better in his first 10 seasons. Only the third coach in history. The other two, John Madden, Curly Lambeau. Wow, pretty good company right there. Pretty good company.
One's got a great game named for him, another a great stadium named for him. That's great.
No doubt. He's never had a losing season. Pretty impressive. He's the second most winning active coach behind you-know-who in New England.
You must not be named.
Mr. Belichick.
And so this year, so I was reading all that and I'm thinking, well, damn, he's pretty good. And this year he's had to deal with the Le'Veon Bell distraction, which, there's no way around the fact that you give him potentially the best running back in the league, things look different this year. He's also had to deal with, and I don't know if I'm completely on LJ's side about Roethlisberger, but I do think he's probably a challenge to coach. I think he's a little bit of a pain in the ass.
It's also nice to have a franchise quarterback.
No. He is a great quarterback, but I think between him here, bottom line, I think there's a lack of consistency on the Steelers. And I think it's caused because you've got Antonio Brown, who is a huge personality and out there a little bit. Say the least. You got Ben Roethlisberger, who's a huge personality, is out there a little bit. You got Le'Veon Bell, that likes to smoke weed sometimes, doesn't sometimes, holds out sometimes. Best running back in the league sometimes. And I think here's what I think Tomlin did. I think Tomlin, the old axiom, if you go into a job, you start out hard, you can always ease up. And I think what maybe happened to Tomlin is he went in kind of cool, getting along with everybody, and now he needs to toughen up and take control of that team, and he can't. I don't think he can wrestle in Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown and some of the others. And I think he's a great coach. Bottom line, I think Tomlin's a great coach and he could coach my team, but I think he went in and started out a little too player friendly, perhaps. And it's gotten a little out of hand. And now you can't he can't toughen up and be the disciplinarian that he needs to be with the talent he's got. Because Pittsburgh's a hell of a team, and I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. So,
well, and on that thought of Mike Tomlin, and I know LJ's got a thought on the Steelers. He seems to have a thought on that quarterback usually, but with your whole is Mike Tomlin good? Maybe I think we overinflated some of the numbers because yes, he's been good since he's got there, and he's been winning every year. But he also came into it a year after they won a Super Bowl, so he inherited a Super Bowl winning team. He inherited, as LJ's mentioned, there's always good weapons at running back, receiver, defense is usually solid. And say what you will about Big Ben, but he did come into it with a young franchise quarterback. It's a pretty good roster to come into as a young coach. I think he handled it well, but I wonder if maybe that roster is more than what he was. What do you think about that loss, LJ?
Well, I want to say to the Mike Tomlin conversation first, I wanted to mention what is general manager's job? Do you guys have an idea of what a general manager's job is?
Construct the roster, construct the money,
talent evaluator,
not the coaching,
And then part two, what is the Pittsburgh Steelers' greatest asset? I feel like an answer for it. It's the talent, right? Do you guys agree?
The talented players. I think.
So who is the GM of the Steelers? And I'll give you a hint. He's been there since the year 2000.
Crickets.
I can't tell you.
So Kevin Colbert is probably the guy that's holding that team together. Mike Tomlin is just riding off of his successes. And so is Tomlin great or not? I think if he were on the Browns, he might not be given another chance, but he was given a great team consistently year by year by year. I'm not saying he's necessarily bad. I'm just saying that there's a big difference between the situation Tomlin walked into and the situation every other coach walks into in the NFL. So just wanted to make that point and throw that out there. Tony.
Yeah, what you got?
Horseshack. Oh, well, go Horseshack.
Well, allow me to retort.
Please.
So no, I want to say LJ is correct about the GM and Colbert. I could not remember his name, and he's been there for a long time. And you got to remember what's going on here with the Steelers organization. That's the Rooney family. Very, very low key. Exact opposite of what's happening with the Cowboys. They are always low key, but are always family oriented.
Yeah, I bet you know who the GM of the Cowboys is.
Yeah, they're always low key. And so I will say this. Tomlin, when he was hired, was the youngest, if not one of the youngest ever at that point in time.
At the time, he was the youngest ever.
And so I think he's proven his worth. And over the years, the 12 years that he's been, or 11 years that he's been there, those teams have had strong points on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. When they first went to their first Super Bowl, that was a great defensive team. James Harrison and
Troy Polamalu.
Yeah. They were defensive stalwarts, and then he has turned that team into an offensive powerhouse because of the talent that he has. So although I agree with LJ in that the GM is responsible for the talent, I disagree a little bit that this year is Tomlin's fault. They should have been better prepared for the Le'Veon Bell fiasco. So if you think about the last 2 weeks, which was critical to them, they were playing with their third string running back, which happened to be a converted tight end. And Stephen Ridley is not a bell cow back. And so you come into the season with your GM telling you, no, we're going to get Le'Veon Bell signed. Don't worry about it. Then you don't make an offensive change. I will give them credit in saying that they made some offensive changes to get their tight end involved more, to try to do some different things to make up the fact they lost 80, 90 catches out of the backfield with Le'Veon Bell gone, and they could not replace that. And I think you've seen that in these close games. They haven't had that athlete to say, take this ball and make something with it, other than Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. Connor's a great back, but he's a different kind of back than Le'Veon Bell is. Samuels is turning out to be a pretty good backup, but you can't ride him for 3 weeks. And so my point there is, I think you got to turn to the GM and say, hey, you did a really poor job this year of preparing us for the loss of Le'Veon Bell. Whether it's by a catastrophic injury or whether it's the fact that the guy just doesn't sign, they were not prepared for that. And I think that's on the GM rather than Tomlin.
It's a fair point.
Well, and if you think about it, Tomlin probably is, I'm sure they're dealing with, I don't know if we've heard about it yet, but I'm sure we will soon. Big Ben must be hurt, right? There must be an ankle injury. I mean,
Well,
it's
he
got to
played
be.
Sunday.
You know?
Yeah, he must be hurt. Sure.
Yeah.
And then it also probably is hurting them that he missed. You know, he missed like half a quarter a couple weeks ago because he couldn't find the X-ray room or whatever happened there, where he went out and couldn't come back in. I don't know what that whole deal was.
He got real upset that the X-ray didn't print in color.
Hey, tell me, who are the two quarterbacks that are vying for most passing yards in the NFL this year? Can y'all tell me the two? I'll give you a hint. We just talked about one of them.
Probably Big
Drew
Ben,
Brees.
since we're talking about him, and Pat Mahomes.
You are correct. 40 yards separates them, I believe. So, you can say all you want. That stat sets for itself. Roethlisberger is throwing the damn
that one
ball
stat doesn't prove he's the best quarterback in the NFL. That one stat also proves he's got great receivers. Juju can go up and make any yardage happen anytime he gets the ball. Brown can somehow get a ball that he shouldn't be able to because he's too short. I mean, he's got some players that can just do some crazy things.
To wrap up the Pittsburgh conversation, I guess my question to y'all on Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are, is there, when you look back, if Tomlin was done after this year, if you looked back, would there be more disappointing seasons in the playoffs or big wins? I kind of think there's going to be a lot of disappointing playoff falters. And at least they're getting there. A lot of teams can't say they're winning 10
They
games
have
every
left
year
some
and getting
potential
there, so.
on the ground, and the clock is ticking, both for Roethlisberger and AB, and they have got they've got a 3-year window right here that they've got to figure it out.
I think
or
you're dead
turn
on.
Roethlisberger into a Peyton Manning kind of deal where they can manage that. We'll just see.
Yep.
The clock is ticking on this, and then they're going to have to go into a rebuild mode.
And I do think, to answer your question, Kev, since you presented me the question and I moved the other direction, I do think that the Steelers are who I learned more about in that game, because I think I knew that the Saints were really good. But the Steelers on the other hand, they were what I thought they were. But the Steelers on the other hand, I've been all year talking down to them. But they are a good team that's got bad breaks. Is what I really think happens. I mean that fake punt. Another inch and a half, and he's
right.
But another inch and a half, and it's the best call of the year because you don't get Drew Brees the ball back.
We're always hindsight. When it doesn't work, we say, "What the hell are you doing?"
That's a team I don't want to see in the playoffs. I want them to miss the playoffs because I don't want that mess in there. Right. So
who's real happy that they're on the outside looking in? Bill Belichick's probably like, I'd really like to not play the Steelers. Even if they can beat them, you'd rather not have to try.
Yeah.
So another game we probably learned a lot about is the one in Philadelphia, where now we have a full-on quarterback decision we got to make because Nick Foles just set the franchise record with 400-something plus passing yards. I think 4 touchdowns that come from behind victory over the Texans. But it looks like, could it be a little too late for the Eagles? What all do they need? They need some help to get in the playoffs, don't they, LJ?
I can't even remember the situation. But
I think from what I have written down, it looks like they need the Vikings to lose against the Bears, which is possible because the Bears are going to be playing starters trying to get that first round bye. And the Eagles will need to win, which they get the Washington Redskins. So, I mean, they should.
Philly should win, and Minnesota should be more motivated than Chicago. But Chicago will be playing to win. There's no doubt about that.
But I wanted to ask LJ to start off with: did we learn more about Philadelphia? And are they just a good team that's getting hot, and you really don't want to play them, or did you learn more about the Texans who just can't seem to? They had that game wrapped up, then they let Philly come back, and then they came back. Like Deshaun Watson made a great drive, but then they still couldn't hold on to that lead against Nick Foles. What did you learn more about in that game?
I'll tell you what I learned in this game very shortly. I learned that they still mean nothing. I have no idea. Those two teams in particular prove to me every week that I know nothing about the NFL. Every week I'm wrong about whatever I think is going to happen. So I can't even give you a real answer. I learned nothing. I'm lost.
Well, it's the same reason I buy the Texans, even though I really don't think Bill O'Brien, and maybe the Texans are in that category like we have been in the Cowboys, where if they did falter and suck this down the stretch, maybe it means they can go get a competent head coach instead of Bill O'Brien. But
well, hey, let me ask you this: what was up with Lamar Miller? What was up with Lamar Miller? He didn't play.
He's got an injury.
Ankle.
He didn't play. No, he's got an injury.
Is he out for the playoffs?
It's an ankle.
No, he might come back next week. We don't know.
I'm just saying the difference between Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue is a big
difference.
chasm of difference.
That's true.
It really is.
Yeah.
So I think that should be at least considered in that equation. So
that I can hear the gong. Lamar Miller was on my fantasy football team this year, and whether you believe in him or not, he's a big difference maker for the Texans because he can control the clock, and Lifford is right on the money. Alfred Blue is not Lamar Miller.
Yeah.
The closest guy they got is Dante Foreman. You saw Foreman play a lot this weekend, trying to get him in shape. They're in the playoffs. They've got a home game. There's nothing that can change that. There's nothing that can change the fact there's no way they're getting a bye. So I expect they think they can, but there's no way that Chiefs or the Patriots are losing both of those games. So they're where they're at. They win one game at home. They're a great team at home, not as good on the road. But Lamar Miller, props to Lift. Lamar Miller makes a big difference for them because it gives them an opportunity for a running back to control the clock, and it takes pressure off of Deshaun Watson. That big run that they've made during the middle of the season, Lamar Miller got healthy. He had some great games, and they really took off. And so with him out of the lineup this past weekend, you saw, and that's why you lose 32-30. You can't control the game when you need to. And I think that's what we saw happen there for the Texans.
Well, and I think that's what the Texans just and it's kind of like LJ said. It shows me that the NFL is something I don't know because the Texans needed that win as bad as anyone. That win can keep them with that first round bye and maybe even get a home playoff game. And now they could possibly, if they were to lose, then whoever wins that winning in playoff game between the Colts and Titans would actually end up winning the division. So instead of a first round bye, the Texans could end up playing a road game in the wild card. And Tony, you just talked about it. They already are tough on the road. It's tough for them on the road.
Yeah.
It's just that win was huge for them, and they couldn't keep the Eagles down. They had them on the ropes, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, it's because they put the Super Bowl MVP in the game.
So let's get to it, Dad.
Get back to that. Get back to Philly.
Dad, so let me ask you. Well, go ahead.
Before you leave Philly, I think it's interesting. Just a real quick little thing. Carson Wentz is still on the active roster. They could have knocked him out.
He's not on IR. That's right.
And they kept him on the active roster just in case. And I don't know.
Because they need to back up the Super Bowl MVP.
That's right.
Well, I wanted to ask Dad. I wanted to see if you had a thought on it. Why are they so – we all – I think we're in agreement. Wentz is the more talented player. But why does that offense seem to click as soon as Foles gets in there? Do you have any thoughts?
I have a little answer to that.
Well, I mean, this is off the dome. I mean, I want to hear what you got to say, LJ. But I think the pressure is off. Foles has nothing to lose and everything to gain. Yeah. And I'm telling you, the pressure that you put on yourself or that you perceive the team is putting on you is a well of a difference. And Foles is a pretty good quarterback in his own right. Yeah. So I think it's 2
weeks ago they were dead in the water, and everyone expected them to lose to the Rams. And like you said, no more pressure, and Foles goes in there and starts throwing it around.
Those for 400 yards and 3 TDs or whatever.
So LJ, what did you have? Because I have a thought, but I bet it's similar to yours.
Well, I think you're dead on to some degree. I also think there's a factor of the NFL is a league about innovation, and if you aren't innovating on a weekly basis, you die. And so I think that having a new quarterback, and I think that's one of the reasons why Jameis Winston stepping in, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick stepping in, and then Jameis Winston stepping in, and it seems like they're always like blowing up, is because they have to do something different this week because they don't have the same quarterback with the same skill set. And so even just opening up the playbook a little bit for Nick Foles in a different way than you would for Carson Wentz is going to keep defenses guessing because I think football is more chess than we give it credit for. Football is a lot of thinking. So that's my thinking is late in the season. It's got a lot to do with mixing
I think you have a good point, and I think that's kind of I'll piggyback off that on my thought, and it's my overall thought in the NFL. And I think you're going to start seeing coaches have a problem where they kind of coach to. I think when Wentz is in there, Wentz is so talented that Peterson wants to coach, like make the offense around what Wentz does. But I think you just got to coach what's best for your entire team. And when Foles comes in there, they open up that whole playbook instead of just going to Ertz every damn time. All of a sudden, Alshon Jeffrey's starting to get touches. You see Aguilar getting open. I just think when Foles comes in there, they completely open the full offense and they just do whatever the team does well instead of just trying to make Wentz well. And then, like Dad said, when you come in there with no pressure, all of a sudden he starts throwing a few, and then that team goes, oh, this was the guy that won a Super Bowl for us. and then your team starts believing in you, it does make something. And I just think it's going to end up being a little too
I like
late for him.
what your brother said the other day. He said, how are you going to keep the Super Bowl MVP out of the playoffs? I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah, that's
like Tony said, Wentz is still on the active roster, but how do you bench the Super Bowl MVP who's thrown for 400 yards?
It's so strange.
He's got to break a leg for Wentz to get back on the field this year. I'm just saying.
It is so strange. We've used both these quarterbacks in this one conversation, Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. And I think there's some parallels there. Fitzpatrick's a great 2-game quarterback, but once he gets the third game, he sucks.
Yeah.
He just can't handle the pressure. Like, oh God, I can't win 3 in a row. People know what I'm doing. Same thing with Nick Foles. Nick Foles kind of just smooths out because the first 2 games of the season he was terrible. That's the reason that
He was, because there's probably
because he had all the pressure and expectations.
yeah, and so that's the reason the Eagles are in this situation is because they came out of the gates so slow, and that was because of Foles and the fact that Wentz was coming off. And this was going to be a really weird year for Wentz, no matter what happened. But I and Kevin said it. I mean, Foles looks for Alshon Jeffrey. Wentz looks for Zach Ertz. Although Zach Ertz went freaking nuts this past weekend, was catching everything between here and Jupiter. You know, it's just crazy. And but Alshon Jeffrey's been much more involved. Hey, and here's one thing I'll say. Where the hell's Golden Tate? Has anybody heard about Golden Tate in the last since that
What a trade by them. Yeah. I haven't.
You don't hear jack
Is he
shit
still
from
on the
Golden
roster?
Tate.
I think he's still out there.
And
but
that's amazing to me. Going back to the GMs, if I'm the GM for the Eagles, I'm thinking, oh, I better walk softly around here because this Golden Tate trade sure as hell hadn't worked out. You know, that's nuts.
Yeah, 2 midseason trades they've done. They did that one last year for Jay Ajayi. And
Nothing.
I know he's been injured this year, but we didn't get a lot of production. And then Golden Tate, they do it.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they're going all in and trying for you, but some of these need to start working. I mean, you're trading all your picks.
You're not wrong.
Hey, one more little twist on that. You know, I read that Foles has a $20 million mutual option for next year that they have to decide.
Meaning they
on.
both have to take it?
They both have to decide, I guess. It says, and I know I meant the word mutual, so I guess they both have to decide.
Well,
but they've got to decide pretty quickly if they're going to bury $20 million in either the backup quarterback or the Super Bowl MVP. It depends on how you want to look at it. But
that's what one thing you can say is, and we'll see how he finishes out. But Foles either is going to make that $20 million, or some team, the Jaguars,
somebody's going to pay him.
Giants, somebody's going to throw a stupid 3-year, $60 million, $70 million contract. And shout out to Nick Foles. Go get your money. Sam Bradford did it. Why don't you go do it?
I saw something the other day talking about how the backup quarterback in Philadelphia is always the best player in the NFL until they get a shot. But
good point. Yeah, I just want to be on his Christmas list.
Okay, so on Sunday night, we got to see the Chiefs go into Seattle, and it's kind of the old thing in betting, and you've probably heard this, Tony. When if you get Seattle as a home dog on a night game in Seattle, you probably just take them. And I still was thinking the Chiefs would go in there and win. And Russell Wilson and Mahomes went at it, play for play. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Mahomes is still there, maybe the NFL MVP. But boy, that Russell Wilson was good. And I wanted to get that to start the conversation of what wild card team or team that's close to making it is the one you fear the most. And I kind of threw out there the Seahawks would be the first one I would think of. The Vikings, maybe, because there's talent. We'll get into that Colts, Titans, and then the Ravens. I threw the Ravens in there just because they keep winning. Yeah. But I'll start with you, Tony. What team do you most fear if you're one of those division champs going against these wild card teams?
Yeah, not that I'm a bandwagon guy, but we're talking about the Seahawks, and the Seahawks really are tough. And they might be on one of my very few buy picks that I did a good job with this year.
Yeah, I wrote the Seahawks off, and they've made me look stupid all year long.
But the two things I think that are for the Seahawks, and a shout out to Prestige Worldwide who sent me some game notes on this for Seattle. Seattle has figured out how to run the football. They're number one rushing team in the NFL, and as they go through these next 3 games, the first game, we'll see how it lands as far as who they're playing the 3 or the 4 seed, but they should probably be favored there. But going either to the 1 or the 2, whether that's to the Saints or to the Rams, they can control the clock. with that running game, they can control the
It's
clock.
good to be able
and
to
you
run
can
the ball
keep
in the
those-
playoffs.
Both of those prolific offenses on the sideline, and you saw how much that frustrated the Rams a couple weeks ago. That could be an issue. And the Saints can play that game. We've seen it, but they're not near as comfortable doing it. And so the Seahawks, with the running game, 1 gives them a chance, and with 2, Russell Wilson right now.
That reinvented defense,
yeah,
too?
the defense is coming around. It's not as strong as it has been in the past, but Russell Wilson.
Get back. I'm sorry for interrupting
Sure.
you. Get back to Let's get Russell
Sure.
Wilson.
Russell Wilson, go ahead.
Russell Wilson
Where are
is
we
a
going?
top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now, and is a top 3 playmaker. I'd put him up there as a playmaker with DeAndre Hopkins and Todd Gurley when he's healthy, as the guy that can make a play that can change a game. We saw it this weekend. He makes that 30, 40-yard scamper at the end of that game. It seals the deal. And he can do that. And that's a wild card that some of these teams are not, especially in the NFC, are not going to be prepared for. And so I think that makes Seattle pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, when you can keep that running game and control the clock, that keeps the game close, which lets – if you're giving the ball to Russell Wilson in a one-score game late, I like my chances. Dad, what are your thoughts? We talked a little bit about this while we were watching the game on Sunday, but Russell Wilson's pretty good, isn't he?
Yeah, I was sitting here writing down quarterbacks I would take over Russell Wilson.
That's what I was going to ask you. All right, let me know what you got.
And so I've got a long list, but honestly, there's only 2 quarterbacks in the NFL right now that I take over Russell Wilson. One is Patrick Mahomes. He's young. Patrick, I don't think I need to even say Patrick Mahomes. I'd take over Russell
Generational
Wilson.
talent.
The other one is Aaron Rodgers. Now, other guys that were in contention: Andrew Luck, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady. He's too damn old though. Breeze, he's too old. And Deshaun Watson is a maybe. I think Deshaun Watson probably has a better arm and probably can run a little better. I don't think he's as smart as Russell Wilson.
I agree with that.
And one thing I want to finish up with though, what I really hope is Dak Prescott watches tape on Russell Wilson. I think he could potentially be a quarterback along those lines. He's built similarly. He can run. He can get down.
LJ, tell him to quit drinking.
Where's mine?
Drinking too much over there.
I have had a little drink.
I'm under his roof. He can
Where's
drink as
my
much as he
hammer?
wants.
I got to hit my head on. Where's my hammer?
I said that's what I hope happens.
Right. No, I'm with you.
That's what I hope happens.
And to your point on guys you would take over Russell Wilson, that's what, when I started thinking about who I would take over Russell, all of a sudden that list is a lot shorter than I realized. And we talked about guys that are, when we talk about Aaron Rodgers, and that's something, he got his coach fired this year. And we talked about that job, as good as Aaron Rodgers is, it might be tough to coach him because I think he knows just how good he is and can kind of be a little arrogant. And Russell Wilson, as much as I make fun of him for his dumb little cliche responses and never getting a good soundbite out of him, he's probably pretty easy to coach. Seems a very team-oriented
He seems a humble
guy.
dude. Yeah, you're not wrong there.
If I was drafting a quarterback for the next 5 years, Mahomes is talent-wise, but Russell Wilson's definitely in the top 2 or 3, I think.
Tony, is he in the Tannehill class with his girlfriend?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So here's what, I was really concerned about Russell Wilson.
The quarterback
this year
girlfriend aficionado.
because, he had that life change, and sometimes those life changes can be pretty significant with quarterbacks. Hey. You marry somebody like Ciara, and I think so, I thought, man, Russell Wilson, he's thinking about other shit. Because, not everybody's Tom Brady can marry Gisele Bunsen and still be, like the GOAT. I think Russell Wilson is gonna give, because right now, Ciara's got it over Gisele. And my proclivity for Danica Patrick. So these guys have been, I would say that Russell Wilson has handled his offseason better than Aaron Rodgers, because obviously Aaron is a little bit distracted because of where's going on. Russell Wilson has laser focus, man, because you got to with what he's got going on.
And that's dangerous. I'm with you because, I think Russell Wilson was out there saying he was going to be celibate until marriage. And all of a sudden he got married to a very beautiful woman. That can change you a little bit. So
that's bullshit. If you believe that, I got some land to sell you, my friend.
So LJ, I want to get your thoughts on one, maybe how dangerous the Seahawks are, and two, just how good is Russell Wilson? What's your thoughts on them?
Russell Wilson's great. I mean, you guys have made it very clear, and I agree in every way. I do think you guys are giving the Seahawks a little too much credit though, because while we talk about their run game and how that will help their time of possession in games where that's very important, their run defense is atrocious.
That's true.
They give up so many rushing yards, and so they go up against Todd Gurley. They're in trouble. I mean, they're just straight up in trouble.
That's very true.
So to answer your question about wildcard teams, I'm afraid of I don't think it's anybody in the NFC. I think the NFC is pretty well lined up of who's the best team and based on seeding. The AFC is crazy though. That's where it gets wild.
Good point.
That's the perfect segue. Let's go into the AFC and let's get into one. Let's first start off with that wild card spot. You never would have thought that the Titans and Colts would get flexed down to Sunday night, but it is the game of the week. It's win or go home. It's a playoff game, and we've had some discussion on this pod about that game, and I'm still sticking with my Colts. But what do you think about that game, LJ? Where are you going with that?
Well, I mean, I picked the Titans to go in, and I picked the Colts to miss it, so I'm going to stick with it. Although I am. This game, they're going to have to pull off something crazy because they're missing their star D tackle, and they're probably going to be missing their quarterback, I think, from what I'm hearing.
So yeah, it looks like and you were telling us earlier, did they signed another quarterback? So it kind of sounds like.
My understanding is they moved up a quarterback from the practice squad this week, and Mariota has come out and said that he felt tingling and he felt like it was a nerve thing. And anytime I've ever heard somebody with a nerve injury, they're sitting down for a little bit. So, and
typically the way the NFL works, when they call up a guy from the practice squad at that position, it usually means they're kind of thinking the guy's not going to play.
Yeah. So
I'll go over to you, Tony.
Picking Derrick Henry though. That's that was my argument before, so I'm going to hold on to it.
They have learned to feed that man the ball, and they just keep doing it. And kind of like what we talked about the Seahawks, when you can run, you keep games close, and the defense isn't bad in Tennessee at all. But I'll go over to you, Tony. What do you think in that game?
If Mariota plays, I think Tennessee wins, and I picked Tennessee a long time ago. I liked the Tennessee Titans.
That's true.
They're a tough team.
You did
early. So these are the kind of games that tough teams normally win. I don't know that the Colts are that tough. I believe it is at Indianapolis, though. Is that correct? And Lucas Oil Stadium. I think that the Colts play a little different. And to give them credit, the Colts run defense, and we've talked about it a few weeks ago, the Colts run defense is really improved, and they have a Rookie of the Year candidate.
It's at Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's at Tennessee. That makes a difference. That slows down some of the speed.
It could be
slows
cold.
down T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
And to me, T.Y. Hilton is the key to the ball game. If Tennessee cannot stop T.Y. Hilton from getting over 100 yards and a touchdown, then Indianapolis wins the game. Because I think it's going to be a really tough. That's a slobber knocker game. That's an old phrase that Dr. Liff will remember. And I think that in a slobber knocker, the Titans win that one. If that's at Tennessee, I really like the Titans, regardless of whether it's Mariota or Gabbert. I think the Titans win that one because although I don't know that Derrick Henry will have that big of a ball game. His history hasn't shown that he's been able to carry a team for that many games in a row, although he is pretty damn hot. He's a monster. That was a phenomenal picture last week on the website, him and Mark Ingram. That's just amazing. You go, oh my God, how did Godzilla get on a football uniform?
Just to show you how big that man
is. But the X factor for me for the Titans, this is going to sound strange, is Dion Lewis. Here's a guy who has been down the stretch with the Patriots, knows how to win big games, knows how to attack a defense. I think if you get the ball to him late in a game and you're up 3 or down 2, he's going to be able to make a play or two to get you there and get you where you need to be. So I'm going to go with the Titans there since it's at Tennessee. That's a slower track, and those folks in Nashville can get pretty loud. It'll be a good time.
Well, and I want to get Dad's opinion. I just think if y'all are right, if the game can end Tennessee, I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but if they can keep it ugly, they definitely have a shot. But the reason I've stayed away from the Titans and the Dolphins is because I think it's a quarterback league, and as long as Andrew Luck's healthy, I'm putting my money on Luck. But I'll go with you, Dad. What do you think? Do you think the Colts have a chance at going into Tennessee and getting a win?
Absolutely, I think they have a chance. And I think the biggest reason is because of what you just said, Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is playing his ass off. He is that good a quarterback. He is the first guy I thought about taking over Russell Wilson and Mike Wood. Yep. I think Andrew Luck is an amazing athlete, a great quarterback. And I'm going to tell you, Derrick Henry reminds me of a guy that I know Tony used to watch. You may have some, you guys. Herschel Walker at the Dallas Cowboys. Herschel Walker was a beast, but you know what he'd do? He'd run in the line and he'd get tackled. He didn't have much wiggle, and I think Derrick Henry is just a beast. He is a strong, big man, and Indianapolis has a pretty good rush defense. I mean, I really like Indianapolis in this game. When y'all said it was at Indianapolis, I was almost certain of it. Tennessee makes a little bit of a difference to me because the weather could be a factor. Yeah. But I'm taking the Colts in that game.
Can I just real quick interject? I want the listeners at home, if you guys can hear the thunder that happened as soon as Dad said the word beast under Herschel Walker, that was not a sound effect I added. That was that cool. So maybe you'll hear it, maybe you won't, but it was bad. So we'll see if it comes through. But yeah,
if he's coming in this window after me, I'm done. I mean, I'm scared.
That might have been Herschel Walker taking a step or two.
Better would have been Bo Jackson.
The dude.
But yeah.
Sorry to
last thing, Kevin. Hey, on this game, this will be a fun game to watch. All you guys out there, if you're going to MyBookie, here's the thing to look for. What is the status of Eric Ebron? One of the things for the Colts has been they've really have depended upon that tight end. Andrew Luck has to have that check down. If Himes can do that job, great. But he's a rookie, 16th game, not sure about it. Ebron was in the concussion protocol, so we'll see how he turns out. Jack Doyle's out for the season. Ebron's the only guy, and he's been a little bit restricted. If Andrew Luck doesn't have that check down guy, that could be a problem. So check that out and see how Ebron's doing here at the end of the week, and that'll be a big deal for that game.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, very good point.
All right, and while we're on, and this kind of goes to since we're on the AFC wildcard spot, let's get into the team that I believe Pops bottom early, and it's looked out well. What about those Ravens? Just how good are those Ravens, Dad? They probably
might not even be a wildcard spot.
They made the biggest statement win last week by going in and beating the Chargers by what I think it was 22-10. Mm-hmm. I mean, that defense is for real. Lamar Jackson's weird. What do you think, Dad? How good are the Ravens?
Well, here's the thing. They got a defense. They got the best defense in the league. And Lamar Jackson
the Bears.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. You're right.
You.
Yeah, you're the Bears. No doubt.
I was going to let that go, and then
but I would say they're in the discussion for
they're
sure.
Definitely, yes,
for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah. And Lamar Jackson, you don't know. I could see him bench Youngin, a playoff game like he did at the
Rose Bowl Vince Young or Tennessee Titans Vince Young.
No, Rose Bowl Vince Young.
Vince Young before he started going to the Cheesecake Factory every day.
Lamar Jackson can throw a game or win a game by himself. I mean, he's got scary talent, and you have to keep up with him. I don't know. He is the wild card, but I would not want to play Baltimore.
Well, how poetic though is it that the Chargers are the team that asked him to work out as a wide receiver at the combine? Like that. I mean, if you're going to show out against somebody.
Well, and I think to your point, Dad, and that's another thing like we've talked about before is coaching to. I think what Harbaugh and that team's done is they're coaching to the roster, and it might not look pretty all the time, but Lamar Jackson's going to make a throw here, make a throw there, and they'll be okay. But they're running the ball. I think they're averaging like 5.9 yards a carry, which is since he's been in, which is a yard better than the next best team. And we've talked about it over and over. One thing I keep hearing around the playoffs, when you can run, it's not like you don't have to run, but when you can, it gives you a shot. And say what you will about Lamar Jackson, and he looks better and better each week. And if someone gets open, I don't think those receivers are great with Crabtree and John Brown, but all of a sudden, if they're getting single coverage and they're getting some play actions, Lamar can make that throw to downtown John Brown, and Crabtree can make a couple plays in the red zone. They're scary. They're scary to me. What do you think, LJ?
Well, I didn't know that they get 5.9 yards per attempt. Then they might not even know what third down looks like in Baltimore. That's ridiculous.
Wow.
Well, that's
No, yeah, I agree with all that's been said. I don't have much to add. Baltimore's a scary, scary team. Lamar Jackson's great. They got some receivers. They got a defense. I mean,
So Joe Flacco has likely played his last game in Baltimore,
I think
correct?
he's
played his last game.
Yeah.
Had to have. And
until
I think
unless Lamar
Nick Foles
Jackson
into the
gets
Super
hurt.
Bowl.
Yeah, well,
If Lamar Jackson,
If he Nick Foles his way into the Super Bowl, we'll see what happens.
he can pull a
but-
Nick Foles. You never know.
well, and what do you think? I mean, maybe it's like Harbaugh says, "Hey, won't you pull a hammy, Lamar?" And then Nick, Flacco comes in, changes the game. It's a different game now. It's a different. The defense has to play differently.
Mhm.
Flacco's still a good quarterback.
He's a weapon.
He is not a bad quarterback.
Well,
but he probably don't
and
start for
actually,
Baltimore next
He's going
year.
to look phenomenal
That's a
in
good
that maroon
point to
and
bring
white
up.
in Washington next year. So,
Didn't they just
You're talking about the
guarantee
Aggies.
quarterback $70 million in Alex
Yeah,
Smith? So and they can't
when
cut
you-
him because he's injured.
when your
but-
leg flops around like
Yeah.
a kite in the wind, you're not going to be doing much on the football field. So,
Yeah, no.
I want to say, to your point, Dad, about Joe Flacco and how you got to prepare differently for that. One thing Harbaugh's done, I think, has been smart, is he's leaving Flacco on the active roster at times and keeps saying he might put him in. And if you're a defense, one, Lamar Jackson and the way they're running that offense is totally different than anything else. So it takes a lot to prepare. But you also have to spend some time at least preparing for Flacco, because if he comes in, that is a total 180 flip from what Lamar Jackson is. And Flacco, say what you will, the man has won a Super Bowl. He can put together a couple of games in a row. I think Harbaugh, and they finally have said now that they're going to extend him and they're not looking to release him, which you think, I don't know, that
2 weeks
stupid
ago,
thought of
yeah.
they might get rid of Harbaugh was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And that's why you heard all these Cowboy fans going, please give him a plane to Dallas.
Yeah. This just in. Harbaugh's a
Yeah.
hell of a coach.
Hell of a coach.
I'm telling you, he's good. He is good.
Kevin,
So
before we leave this
Yeah, go
game
ahead.
here, I'm gonna dance with the girl that I brought. So I'm still gonna stay with. I think the Ravens are out of the playoffs, and so here,
Wow, bold.
out
Here's
of the
the
playoffs,
thing.
there's a lot to
here's
take
the
him
thing.
out.
So Baltimore is playing Cleveland. Now I don't know if you guys know the story
Yeah.
between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens.
It's the origin story for Bill Belichick.
Art
the
Modell.
Baltimore Ravens.
It's the biggest super
were
villain
the Cleveland Browns
origin story ever.
And so when
Yeah.
the Colts moved to Indianapolis, the Browns moved to Baltimore. There is no love lost between these two teams. And one thing, and I said this a few weeks ago when Baker Mayfield is who I thought he was. He's an asshole, but by God, he believes in his team, and he will rally those troops. Say these guys are the enemy. They walked away from our fans when they shouldn't have. Let's show them who the Browns really are. I really am concerned about this game for the Ravens because the Browns have got nothing to lose. And I believe are they 7-7-1?
Jesus, Tony.
Yeah, they're 7-7-1. So yeah, that's right. Okay. I knew I had a point here. All right. They're 7-7-1.
So it's either a winning season or a losing season on this game.
They are fighting
Yeah.
for a winning season. That means a lot in Cleveland,
Yeah.
Ohio. For the Cleveland
Yeah.
Browns to have a winning season after going over for like a century, these guys have got right
They're
here.
going to play.
There's a
They're gonna
and so-
Well, and yeah, this is
so-
a city that when I was in Disney, I mentioned that I was bumping into Cleveland fans pumped about a tie. So
Yeah.
they're looking for a big win for the season. That
So
would be
if you
game
think about
over.
the Browns could have a winning season right here against the Ravens. I think they give Lamar Jackson all he's worth. They can play man to man on the outside, as Kevin mentioned earlier, with downtown Jerron Brown. Their rookie cornerback, I think, can go toe to toe with him. I've never been a fan of I think it's Wallace over there, and so
Crabtree or
excuse me,
Mike Wallace and
Crabtree.
Crabtree.
And,
I don't
and
like
so
Crabtree either, but-
I still think the Browns win this game. I think the Steelers have a great matchup against the Cincinnati Bungles, and
I would rather play the Bengals than the Browns. You're dead on
and
with
so
that.
I think the
Well,
Browns.
there's Hugh Jackson's over on the Bengals, so yeah, I'd rather play
Exactly.
with Hugh Jackson on the staff.
Yeah, so I'm still concerned that the Ravens have got a fight on their hands, and that these Browns
Yeah, you're not wrong.
take this one home with them.
Well, and you're totally one thing I completely agree. Say what you will about Baker Mayfield, and he may be at times a little cocky and arrogant, but the dude has a way of getting guys to play around him and rallying the troops. And if there's anything else besides just the winning record's enough, but also they will take pride, I think, in going into beating a division foe and knocking them out of the playoffs. Like they're going to take pride in this game. They're not going to sit down, and I do think that'll be a fun game to watch. Just because
Cleveland's going to give them hell. I guarantee you
that
game will be a good game to watch.
And to the buses going to Baltimore back in 2002 or whatever it was. I mean, I know for a fact that Baker Mayfield has been talking about that fact. Yeah. I mean, he's been getting the city fired up with that story. So
there you go.
It's going to be a tough one.
And interestingly, I'll throw we mentioned him, the infamous Hugh Jackson. I believe if they can win this game, that since he's been fired, Greg Williams will now have more wins as a Brown head coach in the past 3 years than Hugh Jackson if they can win this game.
Wow. Hell yeah.
Since he got to the Bengals, I think now the Browns have more wins than the Bengals do just against Hugh Jackson.
Amazing.
Because they beat Hugh Jackson twice. Speaking of coaches and coaches that should get fired or not, I want to get on to LJ real quick because, as you probably know if you've listened to this podcast, he is our resident Broncos fan. And I don't know if they knew, but they had a game on Christmas Eve in Oakland. And I guess they were already doing Christmas. LJ, is Vance Joseph out the door or no? Because I hear a lot of people calling for Vance Joseph's head.
Man, I'll tell you, I think he is out the door, and I think that's the dumbest decision in football. I think that's how you end up with the Browns. I think that one argument I got for Vance Joseph is how many rookies, me and Dad were playing this game earlier, how many rookies do you think you can name on the Broncos this year?
Lindsey and Chubb, and that's it.
Well, who's the other running back there, and who's the wide receiver
Freeman,
there? Right?
Cortland Sutton.
Freeman and Cortland Sutton, yeah.
They've got
You can name some rookies there. They've developed some rookie talent. How many teams do you think you can name 4 rookies on?
That play prominent roles.
That are prominent roles. Not very many winning teams.
Well, you probably wouldn't have that many rookies playing if you were a winning team. But I'm just saying that the talent development has been impressive in Denver this year. This is, in theory, Vance Joseph's first year getting his guys on his team. He's made some terrible decisions as a clock manager and as a game strategist, but I think everybody does that in their first and second year on any job. You're going to make a few mistakes. And I think the fact that the Chiefs are only going to get better over the next couple of years. The Raiders, I think, are also only going to get better as they just keep stockpiling draft picks and playing for the future. And the Chargers, the only team that might get worse because they're old as hell. But, you're going to be a team that's always in the back of the division. And then you're just going to start cycling through coaches if you don't give somebody a real chance. And Vance Joseph's got to come in with his guys next year and either give them hell or walk away. But you can't just kick him out for the next best guy sitting on the street. Like some article I read was talking about the Rams quarterback coach is the next best guy they can get this year. I mean, give Vance Joseph another year unless you get Shanahan Elway. I know he's got that fetish for getting Mike Shanahan back, but it's not going to happen.
And to your point, you look at the jobs out. If the Broncos were to fire their coach, there could be open jobs out there like the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. There could be the Browns with a very young quarterback and young roster. I don't think they're getting the pick of the litter of coaches out there. And then what's after that? Are they you want to bring in another, Jeff Fisher or Mike? I just think there's not a lot of, there's not a ton of coaches out there to go get. And to your point, Vance Joseph, while he has he's made errors on like strategy and some like maybe questionable calls, but that's going to happen. And it's not like if you would have told the Broncos before this year that, like you're saying, all these rookies are going to be very prominent players, they'd probably have been like, oh, okay, we'll probably be 5-11 or something. He's done a fair job for the roster he's been given. And I don't think firing him is the right way to go at this point.
And also these last couple of games,
year, I was probably saying yes, but I think you're right.
Halfway through the season, I knocked them out of the playoffs. They did not look like a playoff team halfway through the season. Then they marched back up until the injury of Emmanuel Sanders and Chris Harris, probably the two best players on that football team.
Yeah.
So is that Vance Joseph's fault that they got hurt? No. I just think firing Vance Joseph right now would be a mistake that will set the Broncos back 5 years minimum. I mean, even if they get a great coach, it's just going to set them back hard.
The only thing that would bother me a little bit is they just didn't look like and I guess the season's over and they've had a ton of injuries. They looked like they mailed it in on the final game, and you like to at least see the guys playing hard at the end. And have y'all ever seen a play like that one and that punt return where they make the beautiful save to get it on the 1 yard line, and then Dwayne Harris picks it up and takes it for a touchdown? That was amazing.
Well, and so the Broncos special teams for the last 2 years has been the worst special teams to watch in the entire NFL. It's been awful every game for the last 2 years. So yeah, I mean, if that's Vance Joseph's job, then maybe cut him. If he's got more control over special teams than I think he does, then he's got to go. But everything else I'm okay with. But yeah, you're right. They did phone it in that game for sure.
Yeah.
Lindsey still broke his wrist or whatever he did.
Lindsey out?
He's out for 4 weeks, I saw.
He's done.
6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. He'd missed the third round of the playoffs they're not going to. So.
So I wanted to bring up the other team on that game was the Raiders, and they beat the Broncos, obviously we just talked about, and then 2 weeks ago they went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers. And I wanted to ask y'all's thoughts on, they really ought to be losing. Now they're probably picking, I think where it stands now, they're picking 5. If they would have lost those 2 games, they're probably picking 1. Do y'all ever have a thought on just phone it in? Like, if anybody should phone it in, it's probably the Raiders with them trading everyone. Do you like to see them winning these games late, or do you kind of wish they would lose them? Dad?
Well, you play to win the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to be more like the Jets, who go in and lose to the Packers 38-44 in overtime. That shows your guys playing hard, but also find a way to lose the damn game.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I 2 things there on that. I think Gruden is doing one thing. He is establishing his type of football, and he's establishing these guys as being. They're trying to get that badass.
Well, he's trying to figure out who else he can trade. Like, he's got to find the next best player so he can get rid of him.
Right.
He's trying to find a badass attitude. So for him, being a 1 or a 5 doesn't really matter. I think that for Gruden, he understands the mathematics of it, that if he's at the number 1 in this particular draft, there's no standout number 1 draft pick. There's no, Drew.
That's fair.
There's no, Manning out there. There's no Wentz out there.
The kid at Oregon just said he's going to stay at Oregon.
So he's really got.
So now everyone's going to talk themselves into Dwayne Haskins.
He doesn't care
probably.
whether he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and so because he's backing it up, right? It wouldn't surprise me to see them trade their number 1 draft pick to slide back and get even more and get some more offensive linemen in the
smart play.
Draft. So. For Gruden, the more he wins, the better, because he's establishing. And what does he give a shit? He's got a 10-year fucking contract, man. He can go,
Well, we got an hour in without getting the John Gruden will pull it out of you.
All John Gruden is wanting is the penthouse suite at the Wynn. It's all he's asking for, and by God, he's going to get it. And all of a sudden, it's got people thinking, maybe this guy is still a coach. Maybe this guy can still motivate the modern player. We'll see. But I think Oakland, although I think they're losing this weekend against Kansas City and probably by a big score, they've established.
Well, Mahomes has only got to get 7 more touchdowns to break the touchdown in a season record, right? So
he's going to score 5, but
he's got to get 8 to break the record.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to make it.
Are you sure that's right?
Tough week.
Yeah. He's got 48. He needs to get over Peyton Manning with 55.
I thought the record. Oh, yeah. Peyton did have that crazy year.
The Brady thing, 4 touchdowns to beat Brady. Brady's 52. I think he's got it. I bet you he scores 4 TDs this weekend before they take him out in the fourth quarter.
Well, that's a lot of adversity the Chiefs are facing having to go play Oakland. So I wanted to, as we wrap things up, I wanted to ask, did y'all have anything else y'all wanted to get to before we?
Well, I did want to say that I wanted to go on record saying I agree with Tony on the Raiders need to play because there's only like 1 in every 5 years does the first pick matter any more than the 5th pick. I mean, it's really
there's not an Andrew Luck every year where it's a surefire.
There's really not. It's a guess at any position in the first round, and really the smart thing for them to do would be to have 20 third-round picks anyway. So, and if they really wanted that first-round pick, they've got the arsenal to go get it. They can trade for it.
Yeah.
So you're auditioning players right now. So
Well, and that is
You
a
win
good
that
point
game.
because this right now you're playing to look at who's still going because you want your kind of guys, and you find the guys like Doug Martin who's still playing hard when the season's over, and you cut the guy who's phoning it in at the end. So I get that. I think if you start playing to lose, then a losing mentality takes over, and you can't have that. That's what
I think it's different in basketball.
Browns,
I think that's why the Sixers were able to make some moves and get some.
Well, because there's
talent,
only 12 guys on a roster in basketball, so you
Right.
can flip that whole team and have a different roster. Where football, there's 53 of them. Some of those guys are still going to be.
And there's
around
only 2 rounds in the NBA draft too. So
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I think y'all are right. The part of me is like, well, just lose and get that pick. But I do think you'd play to win every single game, as the great Herm Edwards said. And if you lose, if you pull the Jets and you lose, you're fine. That's cool. But
that's all I had.
You know, the other great thing that Herm Edwards said, any plan that can't be changed is a bad plan.
it's a bad plan, Rudro.
It's true.
That's a great Herm Edwards. There you go.
All right. Before we hang out, we're going to hang up on this. You don't get an explanation. Just tell me your picks for MVP right now. Tony, who you got? Who's your MVP?
Oh God.
Patty Mahomes.
LJ, who's your MVP?
Oh, I don't want to. Can we come back to me?
Yeah, Dad, who's your MVP?
Jeez.
Drew Brees.
Who knows?
I feel like it's a toss-up between them. LJ, are you ready? You want me to go?
You better go, Kevin.
Yeah, give me Drew Brees. I'll take Drew Brees. Give me Drew.
If it would have
Mine
been,
has exploded.
if Phillip Rivers would have had a huge game on Saturday night against the Ravens, I was going to go Phillip Rivers. But after that
but he
loss,
didn't.
I'm going Mahomes. When Mahomes throws for over, he's going to end up with 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. I think it goes down to those two, though. So it'll be fun to watch. All right. I think that'll wrap
LJ,
up
no, wait,
another
LJ?
fun week.
LJ?
I
He
said
went Drew Brees.
He went Drew Brees.
He threw in Drew Brees.
Well, the stats don't back it up. As your heart goes out.
I think he's going to get the sympathy vote.
Yeah.
And do they need to play this week? They don't even need to play this week.
They don't even have to
So,
play.
yeah,
No. And Mahomes is young. He'll have
this
another
is-
shot.
Mahomes is young. He'll get another shot.
Mahomes is actually playing. Drew Brees is Notre Dame with no bowl game before the playoffs. Am I right? So
Right.
I guess,
he can't drop in the rankings.
They gave John
Mahomes
Wayne
can.
the Oscar for True Grit. I guess they can give Drew Brees the MVP for this
Whoa,
season.
some
So,
John Wayne slander.
Yeah,
You're going to have some people upset.
it's all
I've
right.
learned that John Wayne
I
is a
didn't say he
cult. You
didn't
can't
deserve
come at
it.
him. No.
I didn't say he didn't deserve it. It's
Well,
just like,
It did sound a lot like you said that.
no.
Hell, John Wayne's not a good actor, but that will.
Hey-o.
Man, we need to go.
I think-
we need to go long because Dr. Liff had a great subject about free agents for next year. Now we can save that for another time.
Well, we got week 17. We can hit
Week
that on week
17?
17 when they're
Yeah,
Yeah, week 17 because
Everything's going to be solid. We'll just talk about which AFC guy made it. And
I do
that'll be
too.
it.
I think I've got the top 5 fantasy picks next year too.
You think?
We can save that for next week. Week 17.
You know, I feel like there's a guy that would have some.
Hey, Dr.
some
Liff
thoughts
just
on
got-
fantasy.
Tony will have some thoughts on that. I
Dr. Liff
guarantee
just
you.
got gonged. Did you hear
Speaking-
that? He said top 5
What
fantasy
is
picks. Dong.
What is fantasy football? I don't know what you guys are talking
You
about.
keep dreaming, my friend.
Speaking of fantasy, as we sign out, shout out to Keith Smith. Got him a championship.
Oh no, did he really?
The steal.
26-year drought is over. It's over. Yeah.
I think that's how we'll end it. Shout out to Mac Daddy Keith Smith.
P. Smith. Hey, shout out to that old Rebels, Casey Winters, longtime listener. He listens every week to the podcast. So he has his
does.
All right,
his
Casey.
Jameson and Coke and listens to the podcast. So we got to give a shout out to old Casey Winters. He ain't Swedish, but he still listens. Love him.
All right, I think that'll do it for another week of the JPP pod. We'll be back. I swear we'll get better. I think, actually, little teaser, we might be able to record all on one roof coming up next week. So look out for that. We might have some fun coming up.
All right.
Might have.
Uh-oh.
All right, that'll do it. Have a safe New Year's. Don't drink and drive, but, drink as much as you want. And we'll see you again next week.
Bye, American. Drink my Lord.
Kevin, can you see all the lip or can you just see half a lip?
No, I just get to see, Lift's ear. There we go. Well, now I barely see LJ.
Because I'd rather see half a lip and all of LJ. I've seen him, and I don't know. That shit at the bottom of his chin's got to go.
No, it's all right. You need to grow something.
You know.
That's a new. You got to grow a playoff beard for the podcast.
Now look.
You got a hair on your ass.
Actually, no, now.
You just got that one.
What
You
did
do have hair on your ass? What?
No, I forgot the word you said. I make sure that it wasn't cultivate. What did you say? You always make sure you're trimming. What did you call it?
I keep the house clean.
You keep the house clean. Yeah, I keep the house clean.